Welcome back to Kintsugi Heroes, helping people tell the stories they need to share so you can find the stories that you need to hear.
In this episode, John Millam is joined by John Breda. John grew up in the western suburbs playing footy and working as a sparky before following his dream to join the police. John's career took him through tough streets, specialised squads, and work supporting children and families. In 2018, John faced a life-threatening injury while protecting others. He overcame this challenge by relying on his training, the care of others, and his own determination. Now retired, John shares his experience to encourage blood donation and help others find resilience and purpose after adversity.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends of Kintsugi, welcome to another chat, Kintsugi Heroes, Stories That Matter, and a huge Kintsugi welcome to a man who has taken a period of time in his life that was incredibly challenging and distressing, and he's turning that into meaning, purpose, and service. And I suppose service has been the theme of, in many ways, of your life, mate. So welcome to Kintsugi Stories That Matter, John Breda.
Thank you, John, and it's great to be here, and anything that can help someone, and hopefully I do these things so people like to listen to stories, and I listen to stories when I get injured, and it does help people, and I hope it does help someone out there.
Yeah, absolutely, and see, that's why I force people to listen to my chicken squawks, right? So,
yeah.
Because I believe that there's something in there that might help, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's diluted or not, that's their call. John, you to a quick context, and then I'll ask you to tell us all about yourself, but.
Sure.
John, you were in the police force, right? And I think retired in 23 as a detective sergeant.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah. And years in the police force. Now you are an ambassador for the Red Cross Lifeblood.
Yep.
And that's a wonderful thing to have on your resume, promote. But of course, it's not just a random choice. As we'll get into later, that's because of lived experience, and and what you went through as part of your duties in the police force. So that sounds dramatic, but that's not just you. You started out as a young kid and an apprentice, I think, and stuff like that. So John, tell us what we need to know to get an idea about who you are.
Yeah, look, I was just a kid that grew up in the western suburbs near Parramatta.
Beautiful.
As a kid in the 80s, teenager. Went to school, played footy, all my mates. Didn't get into too much trouble. Then I left school, joined as an electrician. Wasn't prepared to join the cops. I was always wanting to be a police officer, just wasn't ready.
Is that something that is it a calling? Do you think, like a lot of cops? Because it's not an easy profession to jump into.
No, I knew I wanted to be a police officer when I was in high school,
right.
And I just didn't want to leave straight from school.
Yeah.
I was still, playing football, and I was still doing a few other things, and I wanted to get a trade first. My grandfather was a police officer, and he always said to me, "Get something behind you before you join the cops, because something could happen to you." And he used to say that he saw a lot of police leave and never had something to fall back on, and.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd do a trade and learn a bit of way of life, because it's a difficult. Policing it's all about communication and talking to people, and the best way to do it is go to job sites, and that's how you learn how to deal with people, and you're dealing with all different types of different people, which is a great asset when you're about to join the police, because if you can't talk to people, you're no good in the cops.
Absolutely.
So that's how I went through that. And after I finished my apprenticeship and finished sort of playing my football, I joined the police in 97. 97.
So you were a sparky?
Yes, I was. Yep. Did that for 7 years. Enjoyed it. Learned a lot about different things, and how to deal with people on job sites and so forth, and bosses, and put me in a good position for when I joined the police. So it was really good to know how to talk to people and different. Like when you leave high school, you're suddenly dealing with, as an apprenticeship, you're dealing with blokes with 50s and they had never spoken before. So you got to learn fast.
Yeah.
And that was good for me I still get a lot of young police asking me what's the best thing I can do before I join the police. Today, I still get messages from people, and I say, learn how to talk to people. Go and work at a pub, work at a job site, work something to do where you deal with people.
Sales, even,
Yeah, anything that deals with people before you join the police, and that will give you a good foundation to move on into the police. And then, joined in 97 and,
I love that bit of advice. It's in some ways having, in checkered youth, right, from football and spending a little bit of the time in the security or on doors and things, like night manager in a pub. I think the biggest skill was not your ability to fight, but your ability to talk.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of the biggest things that you need to do when, and as I'll go on later on, when I joined, for my whole career, never had an issue once until one time.
Wow.
Never had always was able to talk to people, and people were very, once you gain that communication, but just this once time, there's always that one time that something can not go right, and unfortunately that's what happened to me.
When you joined from school, right, that you'd wanted to join, right, and then you wisely, did a gap decade almost, right? But were you coming in with that sense that this is something I want to do to serve the community, or was it this is something I want to do to control, or I like the uniform, or what?
Yeah, no, I think I always liked helping people and doing something different. And having that sense of, I remember as a kid seeing, I was in year 8 in 1986 when they needed Cobby murder, and I think that just was such a big thing back then in the 80s, and it was really highlighted on the news. And I remember seeing it and going, I wish I could do something about that.
Yeah, wow.
And I think those sort of things, a lot of people today, when they see something on the news or they see a story hits them hard and they think, I wish, and I followed that story for so long and on the news as a kid, and I was just like, I wish I could do something to help. And the only way to do that is in the future is like, I'll join the police.
Yeah.
I can do something to help somebody. And I think that was a big thing that changed for me.
Yeah.
And just seeing different stories over time, thinking, I wish I could help those people because they were helpless or vulnerable, and I didn't like bullies at school. We used to have bullies at school, and we'd sort of sort them out, our group, if there was a bully at school. So I didn't like that. So if there was somebody bullying the little kids, we'd go and sort them out and say, stop bullying the little kids. So because you always come from somewhere, and we were those little kids, and then later on we were year 11 and 12, and we'd see these other kids bullying little kids, and it was like, no, you can't do that. So it was sort of, I didn't like bullies and people that sort of preyed on people.
It's like the Dexter of of Parramatta High, right? So
Macquarie Boys High.
Macquarie Boys High. Yeah.
Macquarie Boys High.
Yeah. Nice. I love that. And, of course, Anita Cobby, that was around that area as well, so it would have felt like a local
Western
issue.
Sydney. So, it was something that everybody knew about. And from that, I was like, I'm going to join the police. And then I just knew from then that's what I wanted to do.
Wow. When you got in, you went through, Goulburn, I assume?
Yeah, went down to Goulburn in the chilly months of 1997, and it was very cold, and went through my 6 months training. It was really, had a great time down there. It was really good. Then moved into, graduated and went to Kintsugi, LAC.
Wow. So
Southwestern Sydney.
Jumping onto the roster and, working nights on the beat or
Yep.
on the road. Was it an eye-opening experience?
Oh yeah, it was just every day, just as a pro coming to work and just seeing different. It was very violent crime back then too, in the Punch Bowl, Belmore,
Yeah.
Wiley Park. We boarded Bankstown. There was a lot of gang violence and shootings, and there was a lot going on. Kneecappings. It was an eye opener to be a young constable running around there, thinking, a bit naive, naive, having to deal with these people, and it was definitely an eye opener. And I was there when I wasn't at the station at the time, but it was my team that got shot at when Lakemba Police Station
Right.
got shot at.
Wow. Yeah. Crikey's.
Yeah, that was my team members. I wasn't working that night, but they were my team members, and so it was I learned a lot. I learned a lot about southwestern Sydney, and in saying that, there's so many good people out there too.
I'm
Probably those people as well.
I'm interested in how do you stay positive about humanity when you're on that side where you're actually sort of rushing towards the challenging bits of it, right?
Yeah, it's I suppose you're a bit, when you're young, you don't think of those things. When you're in your 20s, you just want to go in and help, and you don't think of the consequences until probably later on in life when you have kids. So you sort of just go in, board a gate. So, but then you meet a lot of different types of people and interesting characters and good people too. But there's a lot of good people you too. You don't, and which is stories you don't hear about.
Yeah.
The good people that you do meet and want to help the police as well.
I always think, personally, I feel like now I've learned to test myself to try and be a better bloke. At the time, as a young guy, I was like, the world was about me, and as long as I got, my time and a decent footy game and mates and stuff. How do you is it's that idea of being of service to community? Does that change you as a bloke? Is that like the highest expression of being a good guy, or does it wear off?
Yeah, I mean, I think people serve in a lot of different ways. I was going to join the military. I did think highly. If I couldn't get in the police, I was going to join the military. And fireys, and I mean, I wasn't probably smart enough to be an ambo, but just that whole service area was something I definitely wanted to do. And, the military came close, and I admire the military and everyone who works in it, because they just, what these guys go through is next level. So I just, total respect for anyone who worked in the military. But yeah, that were my two. It was either one of those, but the police got my ticket, so I did that way. And I just, I think there's something in it's a noble, very noble to serve, I think, and it's something where you have you make a lot of good friends in what you're doing, mates forever in life, and I still talk to a lot of different people that I used to work with and know. So yeah, it's something that's there's a lot of honour in it, I think, too, and it's hard to, once you're out, it's hard to leave.
I love that the word honour rings very true to me in these calls, like men, and obviously men and women, of course, but from my foe, just the idea that men respond to the tribe they find in that, right? And that the tribe becomes very important. How does that, is that, like you mentioned, you've got lifelong friends. Joining that tribe, how did that sort of change things for you? Did it become more, an aspect of your life that was really, really important?
I think the friends that you make, because you look out for each other, and there's people that but you wouldn't so much be around them. But there's some fellow and women that you meet, and just you're friends forever, and it's sort of this bond because you've been working on different shifts, or you come across a different job together. even if you come across different jobs together or experiences together, it creates that bond. Having been in that situation with them, so only you and them have experience. So it's something that you got to hang on to and keep in contact with the people that were there for you at the time.
Yeah.
When these things happen.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the sort of how things grew differently in a sec. I just one last thought about that sort of connection. Right, we talk about you hear about the thin blue line and how the team and I've spoken to policemen and it makes other relationships outside of the force very difficult sometimes. So I wondered if it's a net positive. Do you think it's a good thing?
I used to have different groups of friends. So I had my work friends, like my police friends, and then I used to have my old schoolmates. So it was very disconnecting, and I never really used to. When I was not at work, I made sure I didn't talk about work too much because it then becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
So it was a separation. If I was out with my schoolmates, out for a drink or dinner or whatever, I didn't talk much about work. It was just talk about the football or cricket or what was ever happening. So there was a disconnect. So you got to switch off, and sometimes people don't switch off from what they're doing because you can't talk about what you did all the time because some of the things you see and do is, it's not the best. So you've got to have that disconnect from. Don't always hang out with police. It's hard when you're always around police because you're talking police stories all the time. Try and disconnect from it, and then come back to it.
Yeah.
Give it a time out. And that's how I think I survive so well on the police is you've got to have that separation when you're not working. If you're on holidays, you're on holidays.
Yeah.
You're away, don't talk about too much, try not to watch too much news and things like that. And if you are with police mates, talk about something else. Don't always have to talk about policing. So that's how I sort of saw it.
I think that's it's a great coping strategy. Did you learn that, or was that like something you were able to to work out yourself? Did you have somebody helping you with that?
Yeah, I've just got advice from different police when as I went through my career early in the days. He said if you go home, different police told me different things.
Yeah.
I always tried to take different good aspects from good police officers. If that was good, I'd get it on board.
Yeah.
It's like I tell people, you want to be a good police officer? Make your own style.
Yeah.
But take on everyone else's good aspects, and then it's your own. Don't try and be someone else. Just try and be yourself and do your own, be your own person through other people's good aspects and put it together, and that's you. So that's how I saw things.
Knowing who you are is a really important thing for a bloke to make his way in the world. Do you think there was a cost to the job for you emotionally?
Yeah, look, some of the people that I knew, I couldn't really, because you can't be friends with guys who are doing the wrong thing. So yeah. Look, I knew some guys who were in different situations, and you just, respectfully, just say, look, sorry guys, or if you did see them, just say hello and just move on, and you don't need to make a scene. But it's just you don't want to be, you can't mix in the wrong circles because it's just. It's not good for yourself or even good for them or vice versa. So that's just how things work. But that's a small cost. It didn't really, it's not as if my friends were criminals, but just people that I knew in different areas. And it happens. Look, you can't help who your friends are. But yeah, you just got to be careful who you associate with. That's all. So
they talk about... and that's fair enough. I've got to watch out. Yeah, I think one of the reasons I left, because you were going to uni, but it was like quite useful to have, a night job on the door or something.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I left was I think in town, every time you'd walk down the street to go to the shop during the day, the people who were saying hello would be the people your mates would avoid, right? So. Because you spent your time working with those guys on the job, right? Trying to manage the people who are causing trouble rather than the people who wanted to spend time with. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. In terms of that, do you think when you learnt to switch off and to look after yourself. Do you think that was was that a natural capacity of yours, or was that something you needed to build a capacity in to survive?
I think I just did it myself because I think it helped me, so I just continued to do it. From the advice I got from different police as a young officer, it's just taking those things on board and what worked, and it's separation, exercise, trying to eat right, sleep. And it's difficult when you're working night shift to get sleep, especially when you start to get a bit older. It's harder. So you've got to look after yourself, and there's different ways, whatever works for you, and in that separation from the job, and then when you're at the job, you're working and focusing on 100% on what you're supposed to be doing. But when you're not there, you have that separation. I just think I just learned from it, and it worked for me. So that's why I did it.
There's a lot of, like you mentioned earlier, your crew, although you weren't there, were shot at it, at the station, and there's no doubt there's plenty of other moments of threat and fear. How do you switch that off, right? Because we know that being in threat, fight, flight all the time is really bad for you. You talked about some very basic strategies: exercise, sleep, good nutrition. How did you switch off that sense of constantly being under it?
I think when you're younger, you can take more. I think because you're not experienced in what's actually happened. Whereas I think as you get on in life, you'd be more worried, especially if you had kids. And like I know my life changed when I had children. It's just things change the way you look at things and the way you operate. But when I was just a young constable at Kintsugi, you're sort of fearless. It's and that's how all police are when they're sort of young. You sort of don't realise what's happening until something happens, and but you're always doing the right thing, but it's just you just sort of see things differently when you're younger. That's how I see it. So you sort of could take on those, like you get. I remember once we had a gun pointed at us and we didn't exchange fire because they ran away. But I just remember thinking at the time. But then after, I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah. Wow.
We didn't think anything of it at the time. But probably, later on in life, after 10, 15 years, I probably would have felt differently about it.
Yeah.
But when you're a 3-4 year constable, you don't think anything of it. It's just okay.
Well, I'll take your word for that because it's not something I feel like I need to test, right? So
no, you don't.
Yeah. Wow.
No, you don't.
So, given as you moved through the ranks, you changed from being on the beat and then the uniform, and then you took on some pretty tough work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
How did all of the strategies you learnt to manage threats and violence and so on? Did that make it easier to do stuff that was would just curl the hair of most people?
Yeah, I think as the more you work in the police and the jobs that you do, the different variety of different jobs help you later on in life. Because I worked at Middle Eastern crime for 5 years, and that was I enjoyed doing that work, and it was very very different type of work. It was just, what used to go on in that people just don't know about and see. And I used to deal with sources, which were people that tell police information, because I had a good rapport with people, and they were criminals themselves. A lot of these people, and you just had to have a professional sort of a relationship with them, and you end up sort of you're not friends, but you end up having conversations because you're with them and all the time. You end up having these, start talking about different things and home life, and they know what you are and what you do, and
so you humanise them, right?
Yeah, you start to humanise, and then and the majority of them they just get caught up in the wrong. Always these people. You see all this gang violence. They're people that started off started off as a quick dollar, and it escalates, and they get caught up, and they can't escape, and it's just the way they have to live now, and that's just who they are, and that's what happens, and it's hard to get out of, and that's how they are, and unfortunately, and a lot of the guys that you see these guys die on TV. I've met them, I've spoken to them, and they know the outcome. Yeah. They all say, we used to say to them, well, you know what's going to happen eventually. It may not be tomorrow or next week or next year or maybe 5 years. You know what the outcome is, and they all sort of know. And they just say, well, that's the way I've got to live. And I say, that's your game. So they have a choice, and they know what goes on, and Meox was good experience, but then I had enough. It was a lot of long hours, and I learned a lot from it, and then it was time to move on, and
And you were working with some challenging and dangerous people in some ways.
Oh yeah, like gun crime and trying to collect guns and people who had guns. So you had to be, and having all that experience that I did at Kintsugi and in the LAC work was very helpful for me there too about gun crime and so forth. So it was very challenging, very scary. Like I've been to jobs where people have been shot and and arresting people with guns and so forth. So it was, and no one had ever been injured, which was really good in our, there was one incident at Meox, but where people were killed. But it unfortunately does happen, and that's the consequences of this type of work that we used to do. Yeah. And then I'd left and I moved on, and then I got my team leader spot as a sergeant at Leichhardt in property crime, and learned about property crime there, and then I moved on to the child abuse squad. I got a team leader spot there. Again, different type of work from Middle Eastern work to dealing with children. So I like to learn different things. Got to move around the police, and child abuse was something I hadn't done before, and it looked very rewarding, and I did enjoy working there and helping kids and families.
Very different focus, right, from the kind of, I liked how you described, the humanisation of the criminals, right? They were still doing bad things, but they weren't, not necessarily terrible people.
No.
They had really bad choices and behaviours sometimes, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
But there's another, it's much more difficult to respond to people who are hurting children. That must have been
it's different ball game. Yeah, like it's so different from like a person who was selling drugs or gun crime to someone who's
property crime. You're there, investigating a burglary, and now you're focused, and your victims are there. It must have been an emotional roller coaster.
Oh, look, when I was. Child abuse was definitely something different and to take on, and the people that work there are amazing that work in child abuse, and it's something that doesn't get spoken enough about is child sexual offences, because no one wants to know about it, no one wants to talk about it, no one wants to. It's just something you never see it on the news hardly, unless it's a. But it happens every day. It happens every day in the courts. You get out of our courts at District Court in Sydney, 60% of the courts in there are child abuse matters. And, we have special courts for it. And we have special judges and prosecutors and systems that are in place to help young people to give evidence. So it's a very, it was nothing... having to help a child and their family, because you got to guide the family as well. And I still know some people that I still speak to today that I've stayed in contact with, and they're grown up now and they're quite moving on with their lives. And it's quite. And I learn a lot from kids about what happened to them that helped me from just watching them and give the way they used to speak and how they used to react when they used to speak to us. And I always tell the story that when we learnt how to do child interviews, when a kid used to come in and you'd speak to them and you'd say, when we got taught this concept of when a child comes in, you're helping them by taking the story of what happened to them and you put it on a shelf. And we put it on a shelf, and this is how we used to, and we put it on a shelf and it sits on the shelf and we've taken the story from them. And that helped me a lot too in my own version of what happened to me, is to take the story and put it away and put it on the shelf and then we'll deal with it now. And then they used to, it was a system that worked. And that's how we used to deal with children a lot. And whether they wanted to go forward with the crimes to take it to court or just wanted to talk about it. That's how we sort of went about investigating wise. Is the power's to them. If they want to continue, they have the power. So we give them the power over the perpetrator. Or if they didn't want to take it forward, and that's totally understandable, that's fine. They can come back in a couple of years. If they're a bit come out, they might be, a lot of kids going through different trauma and so forth, can't face that court, which is a daunting experience. But this is the systems we have, and it was very like the people I work with there are amazing, and I really enjoyed working with families and kids. It's different work. It was just, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again: the people that work in these areas, as in detectives, are the best detectives, because how you talk to children is way different than how you talk to adults, and you learn these new skills, how to interview, and they end up being the best interviewers. For interviewing adults as well. So
absolutely, the way you describe it, how you, earlier, you learned to separate the person from the behaviour. Now you're talking about, listening and, normalising and supporting and then putting on the shelf. That's a strategy I've used in coaching and so on. So it sounds to me like you become a wonderful mentor, a wonderful counsellor almost, right? So
yeah, pretty much. Like they see you as, kids see you as like probably not as a police officer, but somebody's going to ultimately help them and be there for them. And you used to go and talk to them on the phone and go and see them. And like I said, when a job's finished, some people I still stay in contact with, and years later, like 10 years later. So, which is good to see, and you see that they've have moved on in life and are successful and have been able to get through it. And kids are so much tougher than adults. They're very more resilient. They don't understand what happens to them a lot of the time, whereas adults understand the gravity, whereas children are not. They're different. They're built differently and can recover a lot better than an adult because of who they are.
Yeah. I've got a theory comes from I've generated from talking to a lot of people who have gone through stuff as young people, right? So, especially with podcasts, where people share, and we know they've come through, and some of them have dealt with horrendous stuff, and they're making their way, as you said, they're getting on with life. And I think it's because at the point where, the trauma's happened, right? But then someone offers a real counterpoint. Someone becomes a trustworthy, builds a loving or a caring relationship, and then supports and helps that child accept what's happened. Right?
Yep.
And that seems to make an enormous difference in the long run to how that child processes.
Yeah.
So in some ways, you're first responder, not just to the crime, but to the care.
Exactly. It's like, what can they control?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's don't worry about what you can't control. What can they control? And again, it's all this stuff all this lead up especially the things I used to do at childhood, what can they can control what happens afterwards.
Yeah.
Like they have the power.
Yeah.
And then having to, like you said, the different characters, and then having to deal with the child sexual offenders it's totally different to dealing with people from other different crimes. Very, how do you say it, dark.
With did this path of yours, did it make you a better father?
Oh, more protective. Yeah.
Did you offer that same caring conversation to your kids, or was
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Like I used to use a lot of the techniques in interviewing with my kids about the open-ended questions and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I still do it today. Yeah.
Yeah, my boys, I'd be in the car and I'd ask them a couple of questions, and one would lean over and say, "Don't try that coaching stuff on us." I read a book by the FBI profiler, and he started the book by he was at a fair with his, like a sideshow with his child, and he started. They were walking along, and he saw someone, and he tracked that person, right, and pointed it out to his child, and said, "Look at that man. That man is someone you need to avoid." Right?
Okay.
And I was just wondering, does that be, like you mentioned, protective? Is that is that are you educating your kids, or are you being the wall, or
Yeah, look, no, I always say, look, kids are very aware of what they know, their gut feeling. And I said, always go with your gut feeling. If it's not right, then it's not right.
So validating their sense of intuition. Yeah.
Yeah. And majority of the time, because when I used to speak to kids, they knew it wasn't right. But as I say to my kids, if you feel that it's not right, then it's not right.
Yeah.
And then even if they're not doing the wrong, like they're not going to do the wrong, at the end of the day, you've saved yourself. And for future events, that's your gut feeling is normally the right one.
It's good.
So I said go with that, and you avoid these type of scenarios and people, and all the child protective areas like I covered with them, and so so it's as any father and mother would do. So just I did a little bit extra, knowing how things work.
Yeah.
I
always found that kind of challenging to think. Right, it's useful, but like you start to look at does it put a dark cloud on the rest of the world, right? So
look, there's nothing wrong with being vigilant in that area instead of being too relaxed, and then that's when things happen. And that's how I've seen things happen like that, because people just don't have any form of
awareness,
filter.
Yeah,
you've got to have some form of filter.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, well, then I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, if it saves my kid and other kids, then so be it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it was in that space. You mentioned earlier that you'd gone through all of these challenging scenarios and potential dangerous situations, and had emerged safe and well. And it was only after it was in one of this final thing where you actually encountered some self trauma, right? Where you were
I was working in a team where we were assisting another CAS, another child abuse unit, and we're an on-call team. This is back in 2018, and myself and my two colleagues, Tim and Ben, became aware of a fellow who was wanted in relation to some very serious sexual assaults, and he'd been on the run, and he'd also made a number of different threats to the child and the mother about wanting to kill them as well, because of he became aware that she had gone to the police. So there was there was fears for the family's safety as well. So we were helping them, and we became aware on the day where he was through an informant that I'd been able to speak to that morning. So it wasn't actually our job. So we didn't know a lot about information. All we knew that this guy had to be arrested for these horrendous offences. And we were able to scramble. It was Australia Day, and we were able to scramble the team. And it was at Maroubra. He was at Maroubra pub, and he was only going to be there for a very short time to meet this informant that we had, and because he was on the run and no one could find him, and people had been searching for him. And anyway, the informant, I got speaking with the informant, and he was going in the pub, and we had to. Maroubra's the closest place if you're in western or northern Sydney, so to get down there, and then suddenly he's going to leave very soon. So we got there. So there was no time to get uniform. We had to just, we couldn't surveil it. There's so many. I've got to make I'm the team leader, so I've got to make so many decisions on the run. It's what do we do? This guy, and because this guy, if we lose him, and he's going to go and kill his family, we're gonna wear this. So I had to make a decision. So it was we go in. So we went in, and that was probably the most relieving part was that we had him. So we knew that this family weren't going to be harmed now. So that was the most thing. And then, we went in to arrest him, and little did we know that he was proficient in knife crime and knife skills. And he did have a knife on him. And I, during the arrest, I got stabbed twice. Then after that, I won't go too much into it, but then the offender was shot and killed with the assistance of my two colleagues in that pub bar. I got 2 stab wounds on each side of my torso, just below the ribs, with I think it was a 7 centimetre knife, flip knife, like one of those flip knives that you can flip out. So he got me twice, on the left and the right. And the right hand side, it was the first one. It went in and it went through everything. It went through. I've got a list. I've got the doctor's report. It went through my kidney, my urinary artery, my liver, my lungs, and my diaphragm.
Wow.
So the knife went through all those things, the first one, and the second one went through nothing. It went in and didn't hit anything. Wow. So, but that first one that got me went in deep and hard, and it cut my kidney down in the middle.
There's a lot in that what you just said that sounds important to continuing, going along well. So that must have been
going along, as in moving your body along. Yes. So after it happened, I remember I backed away and pushed away, and all the commotion had finished, and I sat down, and I was like, you think about what happened, because all this happens, like within 3 seconds from gate away. Like it's ended. Like it's just like you blink, and it all just happened so fast. And it's like, what happened then? It's like, and then you look down, and all of a sudden there's commotion going on. There's bodies on the ground. There's other police, and yelling instructions, and you're trying to get on the radio to call for help, and I just sat down and and having been to so many jobs before in the past, people get stabbed, and you don't survive a stabbing in the stomach, let alone 2. Yeah. So I was like, I could feel just the blood and coming out, and I could just feel that it was all just wrong, and just sat down and went, okay, I'm going to die now. Sure. So it's time to die. And then I just sat back down and said, I had a good life. I thought about a few things and said I had a good life. And
So you seriously, that was where you went, not I'm scared or like I regret or whatever.
I was just like sat down on a little step and said, okay, I'm going to die now, and just lay back, and then thought about a couple of things and just sort of shut my eyes and said, okay,
Blimey.
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy. I had a good life. I was like, that's why I said I had a good life, and I saved this family. I knew that he was done. My job was done, and then as I lay there, something just clicked inside me. I saw my kids. Yeah, I saw my kids, and then I just sat up and went, right, what are we going to do?
Wow.
What can I do? And I always remember a saying. I read somewhere because I'd always been interested in the military, and it said do what you can with what you've got where you are.
Yeah.
And what did I have? I had my voice. I had my voice, so I could do something with my voice. Couldn't get up, couldn't move.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, what did I need? I've been at stabbings before. I was like, I need blood. I need pressure.
Yeah.
I need
You
pressure
need
on
someone
these
to
wounds.
stop. Yeah.
And so I'm looking around. I'm on the ground. I'm like, and there's a guy came through the door, a patron or the manager, and he came through, and I said, "Come over here, mate. I need pressure on my wounds. I'm a police officer. I've been stabbed." So I got him over, and I said, "Just push hard." And luckily, he came to the right hand side first, and he just put his whole body on my torso and just kept pressure on the wound. And then another guy, same thing. I said, "Come on, put pressure." And then these two guys, just big guys, just pushing down on me, and I felt all right. I felt fine. Like I was just lying on the ground, and then later on, I found out the adrenaline was rushing, so I felt quite. I felt good. I felt okay.
You weren't. It wasn't crushing pain or.
No, nothing. No.
Wow.
No, because they'd been putting so much pressure, I felt absolutely no. Didn't feel any pain. The only time I felt pain was when the ambos got there and he released.
Wow.
Oh, that I could. Then I felt it. When they.
Bugger should have given you the whistle first up, mate. So.
Yeah, they gave me no whistle. They just threw me straight on the gurney because the ambos were really close. Yeah. They were around the corner and saw there'd been some sort of commotion, so they were there really fast. And so they whisked me away into the ambo and took me to St Vincent's Hospital.
Great.
And I'm on the way to St Vincent's Hospital, which is about 20 minutes. And later on, I read that they were going to go to Prince of Wales. They didn't know which hospital to go to, because you get directed, and somebody said you've got to go to St Vincent's because
that'd be my
more specialists.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't go to. No disrespect to Prince of Wales. It's like if I'd gone there, mate.
It's a bit mate. That's the play. If you've been stabbed, that's where you go, right? So.
Yeah. Go to St Vincent's. So I went to St Vincent's. They took me to St Vincent's. And I remember the ride in and the ambos doing their business and speaking to them and talking to them and asking me questions. And then we got to the hospital, and I just remember getting wheeled in, and I can't remember anything after that. But yeah, then they performed a 6 hour. I was there for 6 hours in theatre.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the poor old registrar, like he was on the phone straight away. I need help. Someone needs to come and help me here. I don't know what to do, basically, and all the specialists came in, and being a public holiday, none of them were there, so they all had to drive in, and so they were trying to keep me alive because I was losing so much blood.
Yeah, correct.
Because my kidney
artery is severed, right? So
I've got a major artery and a kidney that's still trying to work, and blood is just flowing out of me. So the doctors came in, so I had all the major doctors come in. To come in and help me. I had a cardiothoracic surgeon, Emily Granger. I had a Dr. Grabs, who's a trauma surgeon. Rowan Gett, another trauma surgeon. And they were trying to find the bleed and couldn't find the bleed underneath my kidneys. There was the urinary artery. They couldn't find where the bleed was. And this is over time. I'm losing a lot of blood. I think I lost vicinity of about 18 litres of blood.
Mate, you don't. That's
So,
more than
so the
most
blood was
people
coming
have,
in.
right? You know,
So blood was coming in. Yeah, we only have 5 litres. So I was just living on other people's blood, basically for the 6 hours during the operation. And so then Dr. Raj Kuna, who's a kidney doctor, and I saw about this because he sees it on TV. And then he says, "Oh, maybe they might need my help." So he decides to drive in just for his own back, drives into the hospital. And then they ring him and say, "You need to come in. This guy's going to die. We need your help." And he goes, "Well, I'm here at the hospital." And so he's like, within 30 seconds of a phone call, he's in there, and he gets advised, okay, by the professor who's there, take the kidney out. So he takes the kidney out like it's a car battery, just take the kidney out. But you've got the thing is with your kidney, you've got all these major arteries,
femoral,
that go
everything,
everywhere to your heart. And if you don't get it right, and that's why the other doctors couldn't do it, because they're not a kidney doctor. Only a kidney doctor who's a surgeon can take out your kidney, because it's so difficult. With all these different arterial lines. And so he takes my kidney out and they find the bleed and they patch me back together, and 6 hours later and 196 bags of blood products later, they patch me up and they leave me for 24 hours with packing. So they didn't put me back together. And when I saw your thing, Kintsugi, that's what I look like. I look like a Kintsugi pot.
Wow, you've been stitched back together with the good.
I've been put back. So the following day they put me back together. So I've got this big line down the front of your body from your top to below your belt and across to your back of your ribs, and all these other little incisions everywhere. So I'm the Kintsugi. That's me. That's what my body looks like, a Kintsugi pot. So that was very, and I had this, and I wrote this thing out. It says, this was someone who wrote a book about Kintsugi, and it says, rather than trying to hide the damage, Kintsugi highlights the repair. Yeah. And that's what my body looks like.
So beautiful scars, right? So
yes.
And Kintsugi, the idea that the scars create not something new, but something more. Right.
Yes.
So what you've described is an incredible situation, both the action that led to it, and then the repair and recovery, and of course incredible rehab after that, and like relearning things. So what more has been added to your life? Right?
I basically value everything that you have and that you do every day, because I see things differently. I don't worry about the BS and the world, and you got to live for today and what you have. Because life is short. Life is very short, and every day I have since then is a bonus, because I shouldn't be. I always, and I get that sort of survivor guilt, because I see people getting stabbed on TV all the time, and they don't survive. And for some reason, I did survive, and I try to be a good person and try to help. And then having been put back together, and it took, they cut my chest open, and luckily, and the doctors say if I wasn't a fit person at the time, I wouldn't have survived. Yeah. And it took me so long to recover. Like I couldn't. I remember the first night, because I was in ICU for 5 days, and I was out for 4. And I remember waking up in ICU and just on some serious heavy drugs and fentanyl and ketamine, and just looking down and just looking at what happened to me, and just like it was all a bit surreal. And and then I remember lying in the bed on the first night, and I woke up and I couldn't even move, and my pillow was there, and I couldn't even adjust my own pillow because I had so many lines and drains and everything that was inside me. Couldn't even move. And then every day, just something new, build on something new. Like today, we're going to sit in a chair.
Right.
That was that was day one, and then the next thing was try and stand up, then take a step, and then just every day was something new, and then I got out of ICU, and I remember one of the doctors came to see me, and I was in so much pain and drugs, and he came to see me, and the doctor said, it was Dr. Grabs. He comes in and he says, "You're going to be fine. You're going to get back to where you were," he said. And I was like, that sort of instilled in my mind. I was like, right, there's hope.
Yeah.
He goes, "You're going to be where you were before. You're going to be walking. You're going to be running. You're back at the gym. You're going to be able to do everything that you did before."
Wow.
And I went, righto, okay. And that sort of got me that bit of hope. And then every day I'd be walk down the hallways of the hospital, and every day getting stronger and doing my rehab and blowing in a bottle because my lungs were half my lungs weren't working, and just every day. And then I lost a ton of weight, and I lost all my strength, and just lost everything I had. I just lost. So I had to now rebuild it over basically a year. And then slowly, then I got home, and then it was just walking to the house next door, then the next house, and slowly walking and just getting strength, and then started swimming, and it was all that stuff I'd learnt before about, take one day at a time to get yourself better, just one day every day. And I used to tell people this, when I used to work, just take. Now I had to do it. It's just okay. What can I control? I can control my health. I control what I do. What can I control? I can control how I'm going to get better and how I'm. And the biggest thing I think was biggest thing in the cops is attitude, and I had to have the right attitude.
Yeah.
So I had the attitude to get this done one day at a time, and I was back in the gym, back swimming, and then a year later I got my strength back. I've still got pain. Like I still have a lot of pain from the hospital. They put mesh in me, and I got internal stitches, and I lost my kidney, and everything else was repaired. And I don't take any drugs or anything.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah, I take painkillers just to knock off the edge of it because it gets really tight. Yeah. But when I eventually got better. My bosses were really good, and that's at that time they created probably the day after I got hurt, which is probably the biggest aspect of what I'm involved in now, is they created the Bleed for Blue. A lot of people don't know where the Bleed for Blue come from, and this is how it all started because I used so much blood.
Yeah, you took the whole city's reserves there for a while.
They did. Well, they had to go. They took the whole hospital's reserve, and then they had to go to the blood bank stalls down at Zetland. Yeah. So they had to get more. So because I used so much blood, the following day, the commissioner at the time and Dave Hudson, the assistant commissioner, they all got involved and all went and gave blood. Wow. And got it going and started the Bleed for Blue, which then rolled into the emergency services blood donation drive. So all this is, and something so terrible has created this great advocacy for lifeblood and giving back. And I go to sessions all the time with Lifeblood and the Bleed for Blue and emergency services, and I'm speaking with Lifeblood, and I go to different events and promote and get people to give blood. And when I hear people say, I gave blood for the first time because I heard your story, I was like, that's what I want to hear when people give blood for the first time and continue to give blood and get other people to give blood. And because if these people hadn't given the blood, I wouldn't be here today because that blood kept me alive. These 100 bags of different people. That's 100 different people that have given blood. It
took time out of their day without thinking about exactly what they were doing. Like they didn't have a picture of your face. They just...
Who was it going to save? Well, it saved me. And I tell that story because, I'd never given blood before, and I feel, and I'm not ashamed to say that, but I feel embarrassed that I never did. But now I get people I go to Goulburn and speak to the students, and they all give blood, and I go around speaking to different organisations, and they can encourage people getting blood. And there's so many other advocates for lifeblood, but it's always good to have that, especially in winter. It gets depletions. The blood volume goes down because of different reasons, and it's always so many different people need it. It's just it's a thing that can never stop.
No,
just you've got to keep on doing it, and I can't. Advocacy work for that is something that now I'm heavily involved in, because I did come back to work eventually. I was stubborn and said, no, I'm going back to work, and I came back to work, and then I worked on some jobs and successful jobs and did a couple of things, but then it didn't feel the same, and then after a while the pain was just too much, and I with my head as well, so I was seeing a psychologist, and I had really high vigilance, and so it was just too much, and you got to know when it was like football, you got to know when to call it, and when it's no longer there, and as much as I loved it, I wasn't doing myself a favour or anyone else a favour, and I just had to call it a day after 25 years.
And an amazing career. So, almost what comes to mind for me is that, like, you're a perfect person to be a policeman, right? Your mindset was the right place. You had that right mix of physical and mental toughness, right? When we talk about resilience, and often Kintsugi Heroes tells stories that is so often about resilience, right? And you're showing that resilience, right? Not that you're impervious to pain, but that when pain comes, you were cool enough and capable enough to handle that moment in a successful way. Does that feel like, like when I say you're the perfect person, like you're now the perfect person to go out and be an advocate, right? Because that lived experience is so powerful, a story. Does that feel like it was, it was okay to go through as
Yeah, look, I think I wonder what I would be doing now if all this didn't happen, and but yeah, it sort of feels like that it was like, I think if it happened earlier in my career, I don't think I would have coped as well. But having experienced a lot of things in my life and different aspects of people and all the different areas that I've worked in the police, I think that helped me. Because it was a big thing I always just say on the police is attitude. And a lot of people have come and spoken to me about attitude, and because I've spoken about people about attitude and facing adversity, and it does make you going through hell that I did, and sometimes I feel embarrassed about what happened, and to other people's stories, and hear other people's things that happened to them, and then I feel bad because because I'm walking around and but people don't see the scars that I have and the pain that I have, and I still have bad days, and I still and for men it's very frowned upon, and you see psychologists. Yes, I do. Yes, and unfortunately, recently I've had people that I know that have taken their life, and this is something that we've got to talk about, and you've got to get help, and there's no shame in getting help. And like, I still get help, and I still talk to people, and I still do the right things, and everything is it's not just one thing, and that's what people don't see. It's not just one thing. It's put everything together, and then it does help you. Keeping it, doesn't matter what health level you're at. It doesn't matter if you just walk around the block. Just do something, read something, do something for yourself, have good friends. It's all these little things that you put together, and I had good friends in the police, and that's what helped me when I got hurt, and I got good support from my bosses, and Commissioner Fuller and Dave Hudson and Mal Lanyon. All these people helped me when I got hurt, and this is what leaders are. And this is what leaders are for. I was a team leader just to help my troops, but they were above me, and they helped me through my storm, and that's what good leaders are. And you need good leadership, and people see that. And I think at the end of the day is when you can see all these things and doing the right things, and get help if you need help. And that's, I'm telling this story to you today because so many people need help, and if there's one little thing, I get phone calls and messages all the time from different people. Oh, can we have a coffee? And they might be going through some hard times. A lot of police I go out and have coffee with, and been through different incidents, and I just go and have coffee with them and see what I can do for them. And I don't tell anyone or say anything to anybody, and it's just privately, or I send a text message to people to see how people are going. And because when you stop that communication, it's hard to keep in contact with everyone, because I know a lot of people, and it's hard. So, but I'm always available. I'll always be available for anyone who needs help. Rain, hail, shower, doesn't matter where you're from. I'll always help them.
It's amazing. I love earlier when you were describing the incident, that moment, it was probably that fulcrum, that tipping point, and you said, "Oh, what can I do?" Right, and you said, "I can use my voice," and I love that, because that's what you're asking. What can anyone do in a situation where they, if they use their voice, someone like yourself will always be there to offer some assistance, to be that listening post, right? So I love that. There's such an incredible, powerful image you've created. Can I ask, because what a journey physically, right? One of the things I notice from my own, situation, sometimes when I'm sick, that's when I'm most selfish, right? Your family at the time, it must have been very harrowing for them.
Oh, yeah, look, I could talk for an hour about that. Just my kids were little at the time, and for my wife too, just not knowing, coming to the hospital whether I was alive or dead. She didn't know, and she came to the hospital thinking I was dead.
It probably looks like it, right?
yeah, for sure. And even having to wait the 6 hours during the operation, and then doctors come out and say, and thinking, oh, are they coming out to tell me that he's died, or because I was basically on the edge of death, because the anaesthetist who kept me alive, that I found out later on, anaesthetists are the most important people in an operation. They keep you alive. Because they administer the drugs, they administer the blood, and what happens is when people receive blood in a major incident, the body then finds out that the blood that you're putting in is a foreign entity, and it will start to reject it.
Wow!
And they said that your body just kept going, it just kept accepting the blood and didn't reject any of the blood, and then that's how the doctors were able to do their job. So it's a team effort. What they were doing, and the blood just kept me alive for them to do what they had to do, and that's how that was so important for that to happen. So it's
So your family, have they accepted their own trauma in that situation? I know you.
Look, but my kids, they went through some stuff, and my wife as well. So it's.
Did she want you to continue? Like, as you said, you were stubborn. And
she said, no, you got to stop. And being stubborn, I was like, no, I'm coming back. I'll leave when I want to leave, not when someone forces me to leave. That was my scenario. I'll leave when I want to go, not when someone else wants me to go. So, yeah. So I was like, no, I'm coming back. There was no question.
Which is probably why you were stubborn enough to stay alive, right? And I'm super glad.
I think so. I think so.
I'm super glad. I feel like we need to send you a Kintsugi shirt to tracing your scars, right? We paint them on.
Yeah. Well, I say it's like, the peace sign. The peace sign. Yeah. Just take away one side of the that's what my body looks like. Half a peace sign.
And it's the scars represent an incredible attitude, a beautiful recovery, and the work you're doing now is so vital to promote the idea. Like, that's such a small but crucial thing that the community can do to make a difference.
It just people ask, what can I do? Go and give blood. Like, I can't stress. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't give blood for whatever reasons. They may be having some medical at the time or sickness, but if they can get others to give blood, and it's not until you need blood that you realise how powerful and how much required it is. And when you give blood, you feel good. Like, people say, "Oh, look, I got a message that my blood was used at hospital, at Sydney Children's Hospital, and like, oh, my blood went to help some little kid or some mum who gave birth, or and so many cancer patients need blood, and the medicines that they make from blood, because a lot of medicines are made with
platelets,
the chemicals, the platelets and so forth, and it's so important. People just don't realise how much blood goes into what everyday aspects that people use as well with medicines.
Yeah, well, you're certainly a powerful advocate. That story is amazing. I'm pretty sure we could cover another few aspects for another hour, but maybe that's the next one. John, look, your story is inspiring. And on top of that, I feel like you're a really good bloke, and it's been such a joy to chat to you today, mate. So I'm so glad you had the right attitude and that you got here to share with us today some really important stuff. So thank you, man.
Well, Kintsugi is me, and that's basically when I
going to ask you, maybe you'll be our ambassador as well, right? And
when I read about it, I was like, putting highlights the repair. I'm like, well, that's it. I've been repaired. That's me.
We'll get you with the shirt up, right? For the.
Well, I've never shown anyone my scars, but it's fun. When I go to the beach, people look, and because it's so, and it's funny because little kids don't have filters. Little kids don't have filters. What happened to you? What happened to you? And it's funny how little kids just they stare and look. And
I had I got a few scars myself, and I was teaching nippers, right? So I had the under sevens, and they thought I was Northern Beach's version of Steve Irwin, right? Because of me surviving the shark attacks and beating them off with a punch in the eye, right? Of course, rugby knee injuries, but never mind. The shark attack sounds better to the nippers.
Yeah, I've used that too. So but I always win the scar competition. I was like, is there a scar competition? I'll win.
Well, mate, I'm so glad that those scars are heading you into a direction where the community is benefiting from your time and your attitude.
Yeah,
thank you, man.
I always say after something bad, something good always happens.
I love that. It's called the Phoenix effect, right? And you are a walking example of it. So,
and I thank you again for having me on the show, and
mate, it's been terrific. Thanks again. Cheers, brother.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Kintsugi Heroes. Thank you to Colin Lilly for permission to use Broken as our theme music for this series. If you enjoyed this conversation, share the podcast with a friend and let us know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support Kintsugi Heroes and the stories we share, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au and follow the instructions to make a tax-deductible donation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.